Hello again guys, and welcome back to another episode of what I'm going to start calling Fly Day Fridays. I can't really guarantee that I'm going to always be making a video about quadcopters or helicopters on Friday, but it just sounded like a good idea. So today we're going to be talking about one that several of you guys have been recommending and been asking for, the FY326Q7. Now I received this thing about a month ago and I ordered it from GearBest, and so of course it took several weeks to arrive, and unfortunately when it arrived the box was a little bit damaged. Now luckily everything inside the box was perfectly okay, there weren't any problems or anything. It's just the carrier that actually brought the box, apparently they're just kind of rough on it in customs and everything, so that's something to keep in mind. But like I said, nothing was damaged in transit, everything came out just fine. Inside the rest of the box though, you will find a manual that has a bunch of instructions in it in 2 different languages, the quadcopter itself, which we will put off to the side for right now, a full set of prop guards, which you can of course screw onto the quadcopter, 2 spare props, which a lot of other ones have come with 4 at this point, so I kind of would have preferred that, but I did order a set of spares and that was really inexpensive, so not a big deal. The landing gear, which is very easy to attach, you just poke it into the bottom of it, a USB charging cable, a mini screwdriver, which can be used for basically everything on this, the controller, which takes 4 AAA batteries. Now there's not a screw that comes included to hold this AAA battery door in place, and it would be kind of nice to have one of those, but it's not really necessary. I've had other controllers where it's very easy to open this up, and in this case it's not so easy, so not really that big of a deal. And as far as the rest of the controller itself, it is a pinch style controller. If you like to fly that way, you can definitely do that. I'm more of a thumbstick kind of guy, but I've been able to fly this with no problems using it as a thumb controller. There is an array of buttons on the controller. They do things like trimming out the throttle, the yaw, the pitch, and the roll. And actually I'd never experienced trimming out throttle before, so that was very interesting. You push down on the left stick to go from beginner to expert mode. You push down on the right stick in order to do flips. And all in all, it's not a bad feeling controller in the hand. And it comes with a 600 milliamp hour battery, which equates to right at about 6.5 minute flights. But luckily this does take the same kind of batteries as the Syma X5c, so I've been able to purchase several other batteries that are relatively inexpensive and swap out between them. Now moving on to the actual flight review. I should go ahead and preface this by saying this is my first journey into a larger quadcopter. As you guys have seen in the past, I started out with the Syma X11, I moved downward down to the little nano quadcopters, so this was actually my first journey into something larger. And it is a clone of the Syma X5c, a much less expensive clone of it, so I thought it was a good entry point. It was right at around $27, $28 whenever I purchased it. Like I said, I'll have a link down below, and if I can get a coupon code from GearBest, I'll see about that as well. But I should go ahead and mention right off the bat, day one, I took this thing outside, I actually attached my Mobius camera to it and took off, and I crashed it. And I learned very quickly that this plastic shell all around it, while it looks very pretty, it can be very flimsy. Of course I say that, but the quadcopter was probably 25 or 30 feet up in the air, spinning around, doing some little video things, and I got caught in the wind and it hit a tree and it fell, like I said, about 20 or 25 feet, hitting branches all the way down. So I was kind of lucky that it didn't get damaged worse than it did. Looking at it right now, it looks beautiful, it looks pristine, but it didn't until late last night. Up until late last night, it was sort of in a cast of sorts. I had duct tape on all 3 of the sides, and you'll see that in some of the flight footage that I've got to show you. But luckily, again, I did order spare parts for this through the GearBest website. They took several weeks to arrive, but I got a brand new canopy for it. I actually ordered 2 just in case, because you just never know. And luckily I ordered the motor mount covers because 3 of those ended up breaking as well. That was not from one fall. I had several different breaks over the course of the first couple of weeks with this. Like I said, this was my first journey out of the micro quadcopter into something a little bit larger, so I've definitely crashed this more than a few times. And it seemed like every time I crashed it, it would break a little more in a different place. So I had the first crash where I actually ended up losing one of these LED covers and it broke the little arm there. I duct taped it all back up, worked just fine after that. Had a second crash where I broke another one, a third crash I broke another one. I haven't crashed it since then, knock on wood, but it was looking rough and it wasn't flying particularly well, so when I got the parts in yesterday from GearBest, I went ahead last night and I took this all apart. I've only got one picture that I actually posted to Google Plus showing the complete disassembly of it. The next time I do something like that, I'll probably make a video about that if that's something you guys are interested in seeing. But the disassembly was actually pretty painless, just a bunch of screws that had to be taken out. And I did take it outside very briefly, and it does fly just fine with this new body on it. In fact, I would hazard to say it flies a little bit better than it did with all the duct tape all over it. But I would highly recommend, if you are going to invest in something like this, you might want to put some sort of clear tape or duct tape around this little connection joint between the body and the motors, just because that will provide a little bit of extra protection maybe. There are some long screws that go up into the body to hold all this together, but at the same time, that's just very sort of a cheap plastic, so a little bit of extra help can't really hurt that bad. And again, like I said, this was my first time flying a sort of a mid-sized quadcopter, so it has been a completely different experience from the sporty little nano and micro quads that I've been experienced with in the past. But this can do all the same kind of flips that you can do with those little ones. It can still move around decently quickly. It's not uber fast and uber sporty or anything like that, but it's really nice for getting out there and making these really long range passes. I was able to stand at one end of a soccer field, and this thing went on well on to the other end of the soccer fields. These are little kid soccer fields, just so you know. But I did pace it out, and it was about 130 yards, something like 120 meters before it actually lost signal. So definitely can't complain about that. But it's not something that I'm going to be doing an awful lot just because my depth perception isn't all that good. So once it gets out beyond about 70 or 80 meters, I start to lose sight of it and it becomes a little difficult for me to handle. So I'll probably keep it a little bit closer from now on. But anyway, this is an awful lot of fun to fly. I've taken it out on very, very windy days, and on the very windiest of days I've taken it out, it was able to survive, but just barely. In light wind, in no wind, this thing's a whole lot of fun to fly. You can do, the little flips and tricks with it and everything. You can almost do a barrel roll if there's enough of a backwind behind it. And like I said in the beginning, you can get 6.5 minute flights with the 600 milliamp hour battery. The 650 milliamp hour Syma battery, I got about the same, a little bit longer. If you include the landing gear and the prop guards and everything on it, it's going to decrease your time. You're going to be down to about 6 minutes, maybe 5.5 minutes of flight time. But still, enough time to have a little bit of fun with it. But the one thing I should probably mention though, if you want to use this as a camera platform, you're going to want to use a teeny tiny little camera. The Mobius camera that I've got is definitely too heavy for it. As you can see here, I did take it out with the Mobius on it. I did get up there and get some footage with it, but it was jello-y and it was just very difficult to control. That's actually, I guess, why I had such a problem the first time I flew it. Why it ended up going into the trees was because it didn't have enough power to actually lift that heavy of a camera. The body itself is so extremely lightweight, and while the motors are very, very powerful, it's still just not quite enough to lift that heavy of a camera. I know Quadcopter 101 mentioned you should probably use the 808 keychain camera. I don't have one of those, and I probably am not going to be purchasing one, so I'm not going to be using this as a camera platform. Just going to be using it for fun from here on out. And the only other thing I would really say about it is, like I said before, it's just kind of fragile. So I would not necessarily recommend this if you are a beginner. And if you are a beginner and you do want to try this out, be prepared with some duct tape, be prepared with some clear tape. Actually, I noticed after a couple of flights, the props themselves started to get a little crack in the base of the prop. However, a little bit of clear tape around the prop base and it has worked just fine. Actually, I think at this point I've only replaced one of the props, and that was because it cracked so badly it was about to fall off. But all the other ones, if they did crack, I ended up putting the clear tape around them. And I'm not talking any sort of special tape. I'm talking just plain Scotch tape. Just one piece wrapped around it a couple of times, and that was all it really took. So I wanted to go ahead and make this video before I take it out and fly it again. Now that I've put this new body on there, I wanted you to see how good it does look before I inevitably ruin it again. But if I do end up breaking this again, of course I will open it up. I will probably end up doing that on camera. All you really have inside of here is a lot of open space. You have a little teeny tiny controller board with an antenna sticking out of it. You've got the 4 motors in the corners and then cables going to all the LEDs. I should probably admit I didn't end up hooking up the LEDs again, and it doesn't really affect anything because it was 1 o'clock in the morning or so and I didn't want to be bothered with soldering at the time, and the motors themselves were already soldered to the board, so I just sort of transplanted the guts of the old body into the new body. And when I do have some time, if I feel like it, I may take this all back apart and solder the LEDs back to it. But for the most part, like I said, my depth perception, my distance perception is not all that great, so I could see the LEDs when I was close to it, which means I could see the low voltage warning when it was close to me, but anything else, I couldn't really see it from any distance. But you know what? I'm probably gonna go ahead and wrap this up. This quadcopter is an awful lot of fun to fly. I've even flown it indoors, though you probably shouldn't tell my wife that. You put the prop guards on it and it is definitely still flyable indoors, though I wouldn't recommend it unless you have just a massive indoor area, like if you have a warehouse or something, because it doesn't turn particularly fast. It's not all that sporty. It's not gonna do the little funnels like you wanna see because it's not a sport quadcopter. It's very much an outdoor, large area flyer, and I hope to continue having fun with it for an awful long time moving forward. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns about it, definitely let me know down in the comment section below. If you do like this video or this style of video, definitely hit the thumbs up down below the video, and if you're interested in purchasing one of these, linked down below the video as well. Thank you guys so much for watching though, and I will see you again next time.